again with another review for the West Lincoln Public Library. Happy start back to the school year for anybody that is starting up again in September, and I hope you're all looking forward to a wonderful fall. I know I am, it's my favorite time of year. For our September review, I thought I would go back into a very classic storyline. If you were like me, growing up in the 2010s, high school, elementary school kind of period, you were probably obsessed with one of 4 book series: Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Percy Jackson, and last but not least, Twilight. Now, while I had read the Twilight books, they were not really my favorite. I do love vampires, and the good news, if you haven't had a vampire phase yet, there's still time for you. This book might actually help. I read them, and while I did enjoy certain aspects, they weren't my favorite thing. I was definitely a lot more into Harry Potter at the time. So when Stephenie Meyer announced that 4 years ago in 2020 she was going to be releasing the first book in the series, but from Edward's point of view, who is the main character, Bella's love interest, who is also a vampire, spoilers, I was intrigued because, to be honest, what I was least impressed with when it came to Twilight was that we were stuck from the perspective of a high schooler who didn't have a lot of dimension to her at the time when I was reading it. So I really thought it might be a little interesting, and sure enough, I've reread it now 3 or 4 times. I was absolutely delighted. It gave you so much new perspective into all the characters that you've already known, some you liked, some you didn't, and I found it was just a lot more fast-paced. There was so much more adventure, so much more nuance, plus there were a couple of years go by, and I really do think it also helped to shape Stephenie Meyer's writing style in a very positive way. So without further ado, here is my quick little review, or maybe a recap for those of you that do know Twilight, of Midnight Sun. So, as I mentioned before, Midnight Sun is a retelling of the perspective of the first book in the Twilight series from Edward Cullen's perspective. In the first book in the Twilight series, we're introduced to Bella Swan, a high schooler who has just left Arizona to move in with her father. Her parents are divorced, and essentially has accepted that her life is now going to be gray in this town where it never stops raining, and she doesn't really know how to fit in, and she's honestly just not really interested in any of the people that she's moved into town. She does try to make friends with some of the other girls at her father's insistence, who he also doesn't really know what to do with Bella. He's very awkward with raising a teenage daughter, but he's very clearly he cares about her. He's just a little socially awkward, and to be fair, so is his daughter. He's the sheriff for the town. And about a few weeks after getting settled into her school, she has made a decent friend group, but the main person that has caught her eye is a boy named Edward and his siblings, who are supposed to be like the untouchables of this high school in Forks, which is the town. And everyone says they're so popular and they're so cool, but they don't talk to anybody and they just stay with themselves. And she spends a lot of the time wondering about him, even though they don't really talk and they avoid him, even though on the first day of class they are sat together, he avoids her like the plague. And as the book evolves, she is just going through school, she is trying to figure out her place. There's a bunch of weird missing persons cases going around the town that her dad is now dealing with. She's trying to figure out a dress for the homecoming. It's a very odd mix of typical high school nerd life versus having a crush, versus there's clearly some weird plot going on in the background of this town that she doesn't really seem all that keen in, which is where Midnight Sun comes in. Right from the get-go, Midnight Sun is just so much more gripping than the first Twilight novel, because you get to follow the story through Edward and all of his history. You get to actually learn more about the Cullen family. Carlisle, his father, who is a human doctor that has worked so hard to overcome his bloodlust and treat all of these diseases. His sister Alice, who is telepathy and mind reading abilities to see the future, and how she used to spend time, or she lived in a psych ward many decades ago. Rosalie, one of his sisters who killed her ex-fiance after he tried to kill her. The whole family is just so much more interesting, and you get to actually learn about all of their relationships, how they all came together, how they all became vampires, and I love that about it. And we also get to see meeting Bella from Twilight's from Edward's perspective for the first time. Because from Bella, when they met for being partnered up in their first class, she thought he hated her because he immediately acted disgusted and wanted to be nowhere around her or anything like that. In reality, Edward was actually super affected by the smell of her blood, which he thought he had learned to control over like being a vampire for decades and decades. There's a whole scene in the beginning where he's literally thinking about how he's going to have to kill everyone in this classroom after he drinks her and takes her blood, and there's this whole mind map he works out about how best to escape, how they're gonna have to move, doing all these things. It's only probably been like 5 seconds in real life, but that's just how his mind works faster because he's a vampire. It was very dark, also kind of amusing, just the whole scheme of it. Following that, the plot moves very similarly, obviously, to the first book, and there are some lines that are obviously word for word that you recognize if you're a huge Twilight fan, full conversations, and truly it's just a lot more exciting. You are not stuck in the day-to-day nuances of just a regular girl. You actually get to learn more about the vampire government and the hierarchy. You get to learn about their truths and the history that they have with the werewolves, the tribe of werewolves that live in the area. You get to hear about how they are immediately suspecting all the disappearances are probably a rogue vampire that lives in the area. And it's just fascinating to see how Edward's mind works in comparison to Bella's. It still obviously has the very same heavy-hearted, I'm a monster, I shouldn't be wanting her, I shouldn't like her, that sort of mentality. But then again, that's what you signed on for. It is still Twilight at the end of the day. Truth be told, this is my favorite Twilight book in the entire series of all of them. Any of them. I think this breathes fresh life into Twilight. I would read all of the other books from Edward's perspective happily. Between learning more about the Volturi, which is the mobster Italian family of vampires, to the final fight in Breaking Dawn, to the wedding scene earlier in the book. Honestly, I think it would really, really revamp, quote unquote, the series. And I also think if you've never read Twilight before and for whatever reason have decided, you know what, I'm gonna do it now, start with Midnight Sun. I honestly think it kind of turns the whole series on its head. It's gripping, it's still fun, it's still cheesy, but you get the vampire you want. You get all the vampires you want, you get all the action, the suspense, and you're not locked into Bella, who is arguably one of the weakest characters in the whole series, and that's who you're reading from for 4 books, and I think that's where Twilight falls short. So, if you decide you're longing for a bit of nostalgia like I was and looking for a reread, check out Midnight Sun. If you're looking to see you're looking to fulfill, maybe you're into vampires because it's coming up fall and you're looking for something that's not necessarily gory or spooky, maybe just something a little fun or cheesy or romantic, I'd say give Midnight Sun a try. We have our copy. It is here in Smithville. This is my own personal edition with a very cool cover, so this one's not going to be here. But highly recommend Midnight Sun for a great introduction to the fall weather. Everybody loves vampires, and if you don't, hey, maybe this book will change your mind. Or not. Maybe you're more a werewolf person, but don't worry, they have those too. Have an excellent rest of your September, everybody. I will be back next month with another review. We'll see you all soon.